few different forms. There's a couple different documents that would really encapsulate that overall end of life planning. But there's also some practical considerations and also kind of outside of the estate planning or healthcare realm considerations as well. So just a quick reminder of a couple of things before I go into a lot of detail here, but again, this is interactive. So if you have questions, you can submit them to the Q&A through function, and I'll see them pop up and I'll answer them as they come up. Any questions you have related to the topic today. You will also receive an email at the end of this that will give you a handout that we've provided. It's our document finder, which goes over some of the end of life directives, but it also talks about a whole lot of other things that will help your family find certain things if they don't know where they're located. So things like, where are your financial records located? Where are your estate planning documents, wills, trusts located? Where can they find these things? Because if they can't find them after you've passed away or in an emergency, if you're incapacitated, it can be very difficult for them to act in a way that they actually, are able to help you fully. So that's the handout that you'll get from us after today, but you'll also receive a survey that will give you a place to provide feedback, and then also let us know if you would like us to reach out to you to set aside time for an initial consultation. Those are complimentary initial consultations, so don't charge you anything to come in and talk to us. We do set them up for about 2 hours so that we have plenty of time to go through the information and your concerns and hopefully give you a good recommendation at the end. But if you do want us to reach out to you, please feel free to fill that out so that we know to do so. And then next week, our topic for our webinar is going to be on estate planning and cryptocurrency and other digital type assets. So that's a very interesting and kind of new in some sense concern that a lot of people have with their estate plans if they have those types of assets. And then the following week, we're going to actually be doing our Oshkosh public seminar at the Culver Family Welcome Center. And if you do want to sign up for that, you can do so at estateplanninglive.com. Okay, so to get started on end of life directives, that, like I mentioned, can take a lot of different forms. It's not just one thing that you're going to have in place, or not just a couple of things. It's going to take a big overarching, I guess, variety of forms. So there's a couple of different documents that would really be part of this with like healthcare type decisions with end of life directives. So a healthcare power of attorney is a really big one that you're going to want to have so that the people you trust and the people you'd want to make certain decisions at the end of your life have the authority to make those decisions. So for a healthcare power of attorney, they generally authorize that agent that you've chosen to make certain healthcare related decisions, like what types of treatments they can sign off on. Can they make the decisions regarding like removal or maintenance of life support? Can they are they released from liability for making those sorts of decisions, right? Those are really important things to have in there so that those people can make those decisions. When we're talking about healthcare powers of attorney, one of the most important things when you're naming somebody in that role is really, have you sat down and talked to them about your end of life wishes? You can certainly write it down. The healthcare power of attorney authorizes it. There's other documents that explain what your wishes are, but it's always different reading it on a piece of paper than it would be having that conversation verbally, sitting down and talking about it, right? So one of my biggest recommendations with that is the person you're naming in that role. Not only is it the person you trust, the person that you know will be there for you when you need them to be, but have you had the conversation related to what your end of life wishes are? Because if you find out at the wrong time, when it's too late to make a change, for example, that this person is uncomfortable making the decision related to removal of life support, or maybe it goes against their personal beliefs on it, so they wouldn't be comfortable because of that doing it. There's nothing wrong with somebody having those reservations, but you do want to know that before you name them, so that maybe you can name somebody else if they would be a better fit to make that decision. Or that person would be willing to resign from that position in favor of a backup agent who then could make those decisions. So having the verbal conversation, very important with that type of role, because you really want to make sure that they know your wishes from you, not just reading it on a piece of paper, and that you get the verbal, yes, I can do that, or no, I'm not going to be comfortable doing that. And I'm not saying, of course, it's always going to be difficult, but it is also important for them to know, that it's okay with you for them to make that decision, and that you get the comfort knowing that they can make that decision. So the healthcare power of attorney is where you would name the person to do that and give them the authority to make those sorts of decisions. So healthcare powers of attorney obviously also deal with more than just end of life. They deal with incapacity, healthcare related questions, lifetime, just healthcare decisions as well. So it's both a lifetime document and also an end of life document, and depending on the situation. The other document that often people are talking about when they're discussing things towards the end of life directives would be what's known as a living will, or in Wisconsin, a declaration to physicians. And what that document is saying is that's where you would state, I don't want to be on life support if this situation comes up, that I'm not able to recover, that it's just prolonging the process of me passing, and it's I just want to be comfortable, kept free of pain during that time period, right? That's where you express those sorts of wishes. And this is also where, depending on somebody's religious, faith-based requirements for end of life, healthcare related requirements because of their faith, or other spiritual types of decisions that need to be made at that time. This is another place where you can put those requirements in there to express to the doctor or your healthcare agent that, hey, because of my religion or because of my faith requirements, I have to, keep this type of treatment, or I can't have that type of treatment. So an example, just to give you a more solid example, would be we have a Catholic version of our living will that has different requirements for end of life than this maybe more standard version does, where the Catholic version requires that certain types of life support still potentially be kept if it could keep you alive, or if it's not just prolonging the process of passing, and that you be given last rites or other sort of sacraments, right? And then there's also other, religious requirements depending on different faiths too. And so that's important, not only for your family to know, the doctor to be able to see that document and know what those requirements are, but when you're working with an attorney drafting that document, for you to tell them what those requirements are. As much as I always ask my clients, are there any requirements with your faith related to this? Do you have any? But, if they're not thinking about it from that perspective, the attorney you're working with, or they maybe aren't aware of those requirements because of your faith, it's okay to let them know and say, hey, in this situation, I really would like this to be included so that my family and the doctor knows what my requirements are there. But if you don't have those requirements, then it's more related to just, do you want to be on life support, or do you want to be removed if there's not a possibility of recovery, and what types of treatments are you authorizing somebody to remove you from so that you're allowed to pass. And with this document, the living will, where people get really, confused is whether or not it's different than a do not resuscitate order, a DNR order, or if it's the same thing. And they are different documents, they're different tools to use. A lot of times when I'm talking about a living will, people will say, oh, I have a DNR order, so that's already taken care of. And they're different things. So for example, a living will, I could draft a client a living will as an attorney. What I couldn't do is I could not give them a DNR order. That has to come from a physician. And the reason for that is a living will is where you're saying, if I'm still alive, but I'm only being kept that way because of life support, I wish to be removed from life support because I'm not going to get better, right? So that's saying I am still living and I'm being kept artificially sustained, and I wouldn't like that to happen. So please don't keep me that way, if I can't get better. And that's coming into effect while you're still living. So you're not being resuscitated at that point. A DNR order is your heart stopped, you stopped breathing, whatever variation of being resuscitated is required. You're directing that paramedic, that doctor, that nurse not to do that, not to restart your heart or not to restart your breathing, right? So that's a different time frame in which that would happen, and different situations in which you would have them as well. Pretty much anybody over the age of 18, if they don't want to be kept on life support, if they're not going to recover, it's really important for them to have a living will stating that, right? I have a living will. In mine, it says I don't want to be kept artificially sustained if I can't recover, right? If I can't have a good quality of life. What you wouldn't have as an 18-year-old or an otherwise healthy individual is a DNR order. No doctor would give me a DNR order because there's not as much of a risk of somebody trying to bring me back. I would more likely have a good quality of life and not be harmed in doing so. But that's where you'll see people who are terminally ill, elderly, in their 80s, 90s, potentially. If they talk to their doctor about that decision, the doctor might say, okay, I'm okay giving a DNR or authorizing that DNR order because it would cause you some harm to come back or for somebody to try to bring you back, right? So different situations in which you would have them and different times that they would come into play depending on the situation. So very similar sounding, they sound like they occur at the same time, but they are different. So don't think because you have one, you have the other. It's important to know which you have and that you have both if you need both. So those are the legal document side of things that you would need to have for end of life directives. But when we're talking about end of life planning, it goes far beyond just the legal side of it. There's also the funeral planning side of it, the financial planning side of it. So with your funeral planning, you're able to prospectively plan for your funeral through a funeral home, through assign a life insurance policy to pay for it. And that's where you can help your family really take care of those sorts of decisions beforehand and really make sure that they don't have to make those decisions for you later. It can be really hard for people to make those decisions when you've passed away, if you haven't made them yourself. They're already grieving. So you really want to make sure that they have what they need in place, that it makes the job easier for them, for example. I've had clients who've had to make those decisions at the time and they are grieving already, and it's difficult for them, right, to make some of those decisions. Now you can pre-plan without prepaying too. That's always an option. So you're making the hard decisions, in terms of what types of things to pick for the casket or the urn, or whether you want to be cremated or buried, depending on the situation. But you can also do the reverse, and you can prepay without pre-planning, and then the cost is covered, or up to a certain amount of cost is covered, but not the decisions. And which is right for you is going to depend on your concerns, on your wishes, and what your family's comfortable with. So, the legal side of things is, of course, very important for end of life directives, but the more practical side of things is important as well. So pre-planning that funeral is very helpful. The document finder tool, for example, really highlights the need for you to sit down and talk with people about your wishes, about where these documents are. So end of life planning, although we're talking a lot about healthcare decisions or what you want to happen in terms of burial or your remains, we're also talking about how do people know where to look for things? How do people handle the estate after you're gone? Do they know who you work with, for example? Do they know where you keep things? If people know where to look for your documents, if they know the people who you've chosen to handle the estate know what you have, generally, I don't expect them to necessarily understand the in-depth legal planning, but to know where the will or the trust is, or where you do your banking, what your financial advisor, what their name is, so they know who to contact, what attorneys you've worked with, right? These are all important things for your family to know towards the end of your life, so that they can step in and help you. And this is also an area where it's not just the end of life where this is helpful, but also when we're talking about an incapacity too. So a lot of end of life planning and incapacity planning, some of it overlaps because of the types of people you would need to step in and help you, pay bills, make medical decisions. With that, I'm not seeing any questions, but I will let you guys go. Enjoy the rest of your day. Just a couple quick reminders before I sign off, but we do have our topic next week. Upcoming again, same time, is on estate planning around cryptocurrency and other digital assets. So if that's of interest to you, please feel free to sign up for that. And then the following week, we have our public seminar again in Oshkosh at the Culver Family Welcome Center, and you can sign up for that on estateplanninglive.com. And again, keep an eye out for that document finder tool that you'll get via email, as well as the feedback form, the survey, where you can reach out to us and let us know that you'd like us to set aside time to talk to you about any of end of life planning or other estate planning related questions. Please feel free to fill that out so we know to do that. But otherwise, I will let you guys go and enjoy the rest of your day, and hope